All right, welcome back to Finger Lakes today. Josh Russo and Paul Russo back with me here. We are talking about a busy weekend in sports across all fronts.
Right.
Big weekend for SU, back on track.
Yeah, very orange-centric sport weekend really overall, I suppose. So, I do want to start, though, with this, a quick note on the football front. I know we discussed a little bit on Friday. We do have some clarity, I think, through the weekend. Officially, Jason Beck promoted from quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. That will be full-time. He will be offensive coordinator for the bowl game and for the 2023 season. Also big on the recruiting front in regards to quarterback Lenore Sellers, three-star quarterback who is verbally committed to Syracuse. Written commitment doesn't come for another couple weeks. I know there are some teams kind of swimming the waters, if you will, on him with Robert and I going to NC State. But Beck was the one kind of spearheading that recruit anyway. So that's pretty big on that. Nick Monroe, interim defensive coordinator for the Pinstripe Bowl for the Orange. Tony White obviously going to Nebraska to be their defensive coordinator. But obviously, Syracuse, big win over Georgetown, 83-64. Jesse Edwards, double-double, 20 points, 11 boards, 5 blocks. Judah Mintz also had a double-double, 16 points and 10 assists. And fan favorite, at least for us in the FL1 sports world here, John Bull Ajak, career high 5 points, 5 boards, and a couple assists there. But that was frankly, that was the beating that Syracuse needed to put on a team like that. Old school rival, certainly lived up to the hype, at least for Syracuse fans. And I know the crowd at the Dome was a little bit less than I thought it was, but the crowd that was there really got into it, really got loud. I mean, there are certain points where the cameras were shaking. So that's something at the Dome that we certainly haven't had yet this year. That's something at the Dome we probably really haven't had in really a couple years, to be honest with you. So you talk about getting back on track. That was more than what I think they needed to do to at least carry the momentum into tonight.
I haven't watched a full game yet, but I've caught bits and pieces of, say, like 3 or 4 Syracuse games this year, and this weekend looked like the best they had looked as a team so far this season. Still early, of course. Does that feel like it holds up?
I would agree with that, especially, really, to be fair, the way they kind of came out of the gate. It was not a good opening, really, 5-10 minutes for the Orange. That being said, it was probably collectively the deepest Boeheim also went on the bench in a game this year. He did go 9 deep, all with double-digit minutes. So that includes Torrance, obviously John Bull, who we've mentioned, Carey and Taylor as well, in addition to the starters. So that's big. To me, that's an indicator that he wasn't afraid to actually use them this time around. And if that's the case and that can carry, then that's a really big, in my mind, advantage, because that bench does have some length on it. Obviously, we talked a couple weeks ago about Hema and what he was able to do off the bench, but really Taylor and Carey, those guys are lengthy enough, and Taylor's got a shot that, man, it makes him a tough guard when he's on. And,
of course, they play tonight.
Yep.
Expectations for that game?
Yeah, so they play Monmouth tonight. The game got pushed back to 8 p.m. Because Syracuse, well, I know you're chuckling, but there's a good reason. The college men's soccer team in the College Cup at 6 p.m., which is on ESPNU, by the way. But what's pretty cool is everybody came to agreement on this. They're opening up the Dome early at 5:30 to have a viewing party of the College Cup before the basketball game. So obviously, if you're close enough and you're going to the basketball game, just double up and go, support the soccer team as well with it. Look, if you're looking at, especially I guess from obviously the way a lot of people do now is from the betting side, even though we can't do it here, they're 22-point favorites. This is again a game that they should go out, handle business pretty easily against a Monmouth team that hasn't shown much of anything this year. Usually it's a team that is at least on the fringe to get into the tournament as a low-ranked mid-major, and this year they just haven't shown anything like that so far. So this is, again, a game tonight where maybe not so much as it was on Saturday in terms of amplified pressure, just from the old-school rivalry standpoint, but go out, handle business tonight, and get the week on a good positive roll momentum-wise.
Sounds like it. Yeah. Bills get a good win yesterday afternoon.
It was wild.
It was wet.
Yeah.
It was cold. It wasn't quite the wintry weather that we're sometimes accustomed to seeing the Bills play in December, January, but it was bad enough, I think, for the players.
Enough of a wild card that the game remained closer than I thought it was going to. 20-12 was the final. On TV, looked like a night game the way the weather was. I saw pictures from people who were there in person, and it definitely didn't give that vibe there. But obviously, TV cameras kind of make it,
darken everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you have the weather the way it is, it always kind of makes it a little bit of a wild card. And you mentioned the wintry weather, right? The one that always sticks out to me is the Lions-Eagles, probably now pushing 10 years ago. But it was enough that, I mean, you saw, for example, Josh Allen slid one time and he went an extra 5 yards. So it's enough that it can cause a little bit of headache and a little bit of, I guess, the unknown of whether the ball really pops in or pops out of a certain spot. Josh Allen, 16 of 27, 147 and a touchdown, rushed for 47 yards and a touchdown. But, Dawson Knox led the way receiving-wise with 41 yards and a touchdown. So, obviously, the game wasn't won through the air. It was won on the ground, won via defense. Bills really stepped up on that front against a Jets team that, they've been riding Mike White and kind of this momentum of rallying around him, and they were able to stifle him overall pretty good to the point that I know he traveled back with the team, but had to go to the hospital just as a precaution to check his ribs. So if you're a Bills fan, I'd say that's a pretty big positive, especially going into Saturday's game. Have a Saturday game this week, 8:15 against another division rival in Miami. So big plus for the Bills.
Which will probably be a bigger challenge for Buffalo than this past weekend was.
Yeah, I mean, then Miami did not look great last night in Sunday Night Football. It's a short turnaround week for them, but the fact of the matter is Miami just has better skill players than the Jets. Certainly have a better quarterback than the Jets, admittedly, as much as probably some people don't want to exactly say it. Defense is where it's probably slightly downgrade from what you saw at the Jets, but the collective unit as a team better than the Jets. And obviously, we know what happened the first matchup of the year, so it's definitely got the revenge edge to it as well.
I heard some chatter afterward, watching CBS post-game, that Buffalo wouldn't want to see the Jets in the playoffs because they wouldn't want to have to play them a third time. It felt like way too much of a concession to the Jets, who, frankly, at this point don't look strong enough on the offensive side of the ball, no matter how good their defense is, to make a push the last half of this season. What are your thoughts on that? Would you be worried about a third matchup?
I mean, I'd worry about a third matchup with anybody. That's just the way kind of numerically you look at it. But they're 1-1 on the season with them. It's not like they were 2-0. If it was 2-0, then I mean, maybe it's a little bit of a different story because law of averages has to catch up somewhere, but I don't know where that concern really would stem from, to be honest. I don't see a space.
So let's talk about a team in Buffalo that apparently doesn't know how to win still. Sabres struggling. Yeah. What's going on there?
So I don't know if Nate can chime in a little bit better than this on me. I know there seems to be a little bit of a goaltender, I wouldn't say exact problem, but dilemma, I guess. Is that the proper phrasing to kind of go about it, Nate, would you say?
Yeah, I would say it's a problem. Rookie goaltender Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen hasn't really shown yet that he can be an NHL goaltender, but he's still young in terms of NHL years.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've kind of said this now the past couple of weeks, right? This is a team that they're still trying to find their way. They got the nucleus. They kind of have the right path. I think, you start the year the way that they did, you kind of punch above the weight class a little bit. Expectations kind of can shift a little bit.
Yep.
Look, that being said, to me, it's still early enough, still in the hunt that if they wanted to get to a wild card spot or one of the, I guess, say the 3 seed in division wise, they could. I think as long as you kind of see them play, maybe I'm looking at it from too much of a macro perspective at this point.
You just want to see improvement, right? You just want to see steady improvement, record and playoff picture.
Exactly.
Kind of
if you're going into each week, right, and you kind of look at it from the 3/4 games that you play in a week, if you're able to take whether it's 2 of the 4, 1 of the 3, but your differentials are only say a goal or 2 off, then that's a big plus to me. Yeah, I mean it's a tough deal when you have a young team, but the nucleus is there. I think the recipe is there. It's just a matter of maybe a little bit more seasoning.
Just be patient.
Exactly.
Just be patient. Where folks are apparently not being patient is the front office of the New York Mets. We are in win now mode, baby. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yankees fans sitting across from me right here. How are you feeling after the Mets had an incredible weekend, landing Senga, obviously tying up Nimmo last week, Robertson, one of the better. We went from me personally as a Mets fan 2 weeks ago. If you asked me what our pitching staff was going to look like without DeGrom, I would have said we are in deep, deep trouble. Now we look like one of the deeper pitching staffs in the National League.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a couple, I'd say, loose ends bullpen-wise kind of tie up, but you could probably say that for the other 29 teams in the league.
Yeah.
So it's not that big a deal, but sheesh.
And you can wait longer on relief pitching. Right. You and I have had that conversation.
Well, I mean,
before.
you can put guys from AAA. You can figure that out within the trade market. Relievers you can really find anywhere at any given time.
Yeah.
It's interesting though because it's you look at what they did, and like the Senga signing was a later on Saturday bomb from Hall Collinson. Look, Steve's not afraid to spend. I kind of chug out these people like the tax. I mean, the tax in baseball is just like a paper bag fallacy because it's just a soft cap. I mean, if you got the money to spend, and this is the thing, right? Going back into, if you want to go really deep into last week, that's been brought up many times, is the fact that, look, you see what the Mets are doing, okay? The fact of the matter is, have the Yankees been as active as I think myself and other fans have wanted? No, but at the end of the day, they locked up Judge. So I'd say mission accomplished from the grand scheme of things. But look, they do what they signed them for. You see what they did there. You see what obviously San Diego's done. I mean, pretty much all but like one team in the league, and I'm going to just call them out in Tampa Bay, right? They can sign people for as much as they want, for as long as they want. It's just whether or not they choose to or not, right? So to the people complaining about what Steve Cohen and the Mets have done, it's crocodile tears to me, to be honest. Why were people not upset when the Dodgers were doing this a couple years ago, right? Why weren't people upset when the Yankees? Well, they were upset when the Yankees kind of did it, but like, why are you upset now? Because the Mets shown that they were contenders this year.
Do you think that's
only
more,
got better?
Do you think that's more frustration that more teams aren't doing it than it is a manifestation of people just not liking the practice itself?
Definitely is. I mean, you look at certain teams throughout the league, and where I'd say maybe some have kind of fallen out of grace with people. I mean, Detroit's one that comes to mind for me. I remember coming out of high school and into college, they were spenders, they were contenders, and since then, nothing really came of it. You still have the albatross that is, Miguel Cabrera's contract. There's only 1 year of it left. But you had that. They went out, they spent money on Victor Martinez. They went out and then spent money to shore up their pitching, locked up Scherzer and Verlander for X amount of years while they were still Tigers, right? Oddly enough that they're teammates now in the Mets again, but and you kind of look and now they're just laughably one of the more awful teams in baseball.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a sentiment from a lot of fans, especially ones like that, where it's like they know what they've been able to do in the past. Why aren't we doing it now? And look, I mean, the Mets were one of the more memeable teams the past 15 years, in all fairness. And now that they're getting serious, nobody wants that,
So give Yankees fans, this is where I want to wrap it, give Yankees fans a nugget of hope, I guess, as they continue to be barraged with endless Mets news, which may or may not be over at this point for winter meetings and free agent signings.
Yeah, I'll pepper two. Carlos Rodon. There's enough interest mutually there that I think they'll get something figured out. Take this one with a big grain of salt, though, what I'm about to say. Apparently, they've contacted the Padres about Tatis and his availability potentially. Look, there's big baggage with Tatis at this point. Obviously, the PED suspension, but as I saw somebody comment before, and I laughed, and I think it's true. Look at an injury report now that rivals what Mark Pryor had in his career.
Yeah.
So would he solve a shortstop problem for the Yankees? Oh, yeah, definitely. Would it bite him in the rear end potentially? Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'd say the second, definitely a grain of salt. Wouldn't expect it to happen. First one, I'm more confident in happening. I think it's a lot of it now is that they're figuring out details, I would say.
Yeah.
But there's enough interest. I mean, there was interest last offseason before Rodon signed with the Giants that I think he wouldn't mind coming to New York. Obviously, New York wouldn't mind having him.
Yeah, and with Cashman having another stay here in New York,
Yeah.
I think people are going to New York Yankees fans are going to want to see something produced here in the next couple of years.
And to be fair, he's been the GM now since '98 full time. Obviously, he oversaw the run that they had in the late '90s and the early 2000s. But to be fair, that was really Gene Michael's group that he kind of created there with Jeter, Posada, Rivera, Pettit, so on and so forth, Bernie. To Cashman's credit, he did 09 on his own, but it's about it. This is his put up or shut up time.
All right, Paul, thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Finger Lakes Today. For Rebecca Swift, I'm Josh Durso. Remember, for the latest news, weather, sports, and podcasts, download the FingerLakes1.com app. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.